Hello, everyone. Welcome to KTAL News Now. I'm your host, Anthony Mocklin, and today is Tuesday, which means that it is Tech Tuesday here on KTAL News Now. And for those of you who aren't familiar, every day during the week, we like to do a different theme. So, for example, yesterday was a weekend recap on Mondays. Today is Tech Tuesday, of course. And then Wednesdays are usually Wellness Wednesdays. Thursdays, we like to look ahead to the weekend and see what's going on around the area. And then Friday, since it is football season, it is Football Friday. Normally, it would be Feel Good Friday, where we round up some of the happy, feel good stories from the week. But since we are right in the swing of football season, it has been Football Friday, where we cover college, NFL, and high school sports. So be sure to tune in every day, Monday through Friday, here on KTAL News Now at 1 p.m. on ktalnews.com. But let's dive into today's segment on Tech Tuesday, starting off with the Valve Corporation. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Valve, they are the parent company of the Steam software, which is the primary PC gaming software where all of the games live pretty much. I would call, a lot of people have been recently calling them a monopoly when it comes to PC gaming, but they are the only ones that really don't try to monopolize the market. Like, they don't make any outward efforts to do so. They just kind of have the best platform out there when it comes to where all of your games live and accessing those. The Steam store where you can buy games, they have sales all the time. They have seasonal sales 4 times a year, and then little bitty discounts that are scattered throughout the whole year. And even when games officially release, most of them, if not all of them that I've seen, especially from smaller developers and indie developers, they have had, introductory offers where it'll give you 10% off of the retail price, which is, with games becoming more expensive nowadays, this is such a breath of fresh air when it comes to gaming, especially if you're a PC gamer. And they recently just unveiled a plethora of new hardware that is coming in early 2026, and those include the Steam Machine, brand new controller, and then the Steam Frame VR headset. Now, the biggest takeaway from that announcement was the Steam Machine, which people are trying to wrap their heads around what exactly it is. People are calling it a console. People are saying it's just a mini PC. Well, it's a little bit of both. At its core, it is a gaming PC, but it is in such a tiny, compact build that it is essentially about maybe this big, if I had to guess, because it is a 6-inch cube. It's very reminiscent of a GameCube from Nintendo, if you had one of those growing up. But it is meant to be this compact, out of the way, not this eyesore of a console. They called it, I believe it said it had a dead front, where whenever it's off, it's hard to notice it's even there. It's supposed to pretty much go on top of or underneath an entertainment center for easy living room gaming experiences. And as I was saying, with what it exactly is categorized as, it is technically a mini PC based on the build of it and all the components. It even has its own operating system, which is Linux, which is the Steam native operating system. But they even came out and said that this is a PC essentially. So you can pretty much, if you wanted to, you can open it up, turn it on, and go into desktop mode, and then download Windows if you prefer operating a computer on Windows software or a Windows operating system. They give you the freedom to do that, which, again, they're just proving to the competition that they are giving everybody access. Like, they're not gatekeeping anything from people saying, oh, you have to use our software, you have to do this. Like, it is a computer at the end of the day, and you can pretty much do whatever you want on a computer. But like I said, they announced that this is releasing in the first quarter of 2026, which means that it will be available no later than March 31st, 2026, based on their estimates in their release of saying that. But a lot of people were trying to figure out, what the price is going to be, because that was a key detail that was omitted from the release. Now, If you look at the picture on the screen, that is a Steam Deck. It is a portable handheld gaming system released by Valve a couple years ago. They just released a new OLED model, which I was able to get my hands on. It is super, super nice. It's such a premium feel. It's pretty much a mini version of a computer that you can take on the go. It's like the Switch, but it's native to computer games and the Steam software where all of the games live. And it is also in itself a mini computer because you can access a desktop mode and install whatever you want on it, from mods to your own software to anything you want. And this is apparently, the Steam machine is apparently 6 times as powerful as the Steam Deck, which is a pretty bold claim considering the Steam Deck, while it's not this absolute beast of a machine, it's pretty amazing what they can fit into that, having it pretty much a handheld computer at all times. And raises a lot of questions about the price, because the Steam Deck, I believe, starts around $400 to $500, where if you get the upgraded versions of them in terms of storage, that can tick all the way up to, especially if you have the OLED screen, that can tick all the way up to, I believe, $750. So if they're saying it's 6 times as powerful as the Steam Deck, it could be pretty pricey, but they run the risk of it being super niche. And if people already have a gaming PC, what incentive would they have to spend whatever it is, if it ends up being $1,000 on a very niche mini PC that they already would have in their office or their room? Like, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for it to be this super expensive thing, but that remains to be seen, like I said. And as far as the different models that it will be available in, it will be a 512 gigabyte or a 2 terabyte storage model. And I'm assuming the prices of those will be drastically different, especially the 2 terabyte model. That might be where you get into that $1,000 range, if I had to guess. But we'll see what happens. But like I was saying, it's supposed to be 6 times more powerful than the deck, which is going for around like $500 at the base price. And based on the specs that are available in the Steam machine, it is still quite underpowered compared to a modern gaming PC. Based on the power supply unit that is present with the the Steam machine, it is only around 200 watts of power, which I think normal high-end PCs are around like 500 watts, 400 to 500 watts. So it's still a little bit underpowered in terms of that, but they did have to fit pretty much everything into that small cube. So it's understandable why they had to make, I guess, some sacrifices when it comes to the parts. Not sure how compatible it will be if people want to upgrade specific parts in the machine or not. That, again, remains to be seen, although the front plate, at least, of the Steam machine is customizable. They did showcase the base model. They also had this wood paneling that you could put on the front to make it blend in more with wooden furniture and the things around your house. I'm very excited to see how customizable it will be in terms of the exterior of the console itself, because I'm sure there's a lot of things you can do when it comes to that, and especially when it comes to games. You could have a bunch of different game themed things around your console, or faceplates that you can customize at will depending on your interests. But like I was saying, it can boot up in desktop mode, install other operating systems, emulators, which is a huge thing that I legally do not condone. It's a pretty frowned upon in terms of the gaming community, because you aren't necessarily supporting the developers. But when it comes to older games, especially with Nintendo, and games that are physically unable to be accessed because they are released for older consoles that they have yet to bring to modern consoles to play. I know Nintendo Switch Online has their virtual consoles where you can play older games from Game Boy, Nintendo 64, GameCube, but they are doing that as sort of a drip release model where it's not the full library of games. They're just kind of releasing them in batches every few months or so. And people are growing tired of that, honestly. I'm included in that. So the only way to actually play their older games that are not available on modern consoles is to go on eBay and find an old copy, which can, if especially if it's out of print and it's not available on any modern console, it can be in upwards of hundreds to even thousands of dollars to find a copy of that game because of the scarcity of it. Or you can just emulate the game for free. And again, I'm not condoning anything with this legally, but it comes to a point where you're out of options essentially. So whatever you decide to download in your own home when it comes to video games, that's between you and your internet provider. But I'm not gonna condone anything. Like I said, it is illegal, so I'm not gonna condone that. But at some point, you just gotta understand that there's no other way to do so. So make sure you're being careful out there on the internet and watch what you're downloading, because there are so many sites that can download this malware to your computer. So whatever you're doing, just make sure you're doing it in a safe way. But the biggest draw when it comes to the Steam machine for people who might be on the fence, if they don't have a gaming PC and they want to eventually get into the PC space, if they grew up playing consoles their whole lives and want to branch out to PC, this, I think, is a great starting point depending on the price because of the compactability. It would be super portable like a console, but it is in itself a mini PC. And not only would you get that as something to put in your living room as and act like a console, you also get access to the largest gaming library among all games. When it comes to PC, the library on Steam is unmatched because you also get access to so many indie games that are great, run of the mill, diamond in the rough games that are nominated for a lot of game awards this year. I'll get into that a little bit later. But it also has free online play, which compared to PlayStation and Xbox, you have to pay a monthly subscription to access online multiplayer features, which does, unfortunately, it's a pretty slight thing to have to do whenever you're trying to play with friends. And it's a very frustrating to have to pay a monthly fee on top of the console, the games, controllers. It just adds up. So if you think about it, if this does end up being in maybe like the $700 range, I mean, Xboxes and PlayStations nowadays are going for at least $500 to $600. So if you add it up with the monthly online subscriptions, all the games, the controllers, I think that the Steam machine would be a much better investment in the long run, considering the fact that their games go on sales all the time, like I was saying, and you can find cheap keys that you can activate on your machine on third-party websites like cdkeys.com, which is now rebranded to Loaded, I believe. And it's a no-brainer for me when you're weighing the pros and cons of what to get moving forward. If I had a family and I had a kid and he wanted a console, it'd be different if all of his friends had one too, because I think that was the main reason why I had an Xbox for so long, is because my friends had Xboxes and then we could play together. But now in the age of today, where you have cross compatibility with PlayStation, Xbox, PC, you can all play together. I think that a Steam machine is a great entry to the PC gaming world, especially long term if you want to branch out and eventually either buy a pre-built one or build your own. But let's look at the specs a little bit. Now, this is going to get a little bit nerdy for all of the people who don't really know what any of this means. I'm going to try to spell it out as easy as I can for you. And looking ahead to the CPU, the central processing unit, they are using an AMD Zen one, and that one has 6 cores and 12 threads. And you might be asking, what the heck is that? It essentially allows the computer to run a whole bunch of tasks at one time. Think of it as a way to have a bunch of processes running at the same time and be able to do a bunch of different things at the same time without essentially crashing or, booting out on you. But the memory, it has a 16 gigabyte DDR5 RAM. And this one, again, it allows you to access memory files at any time, random access memory. That's what RAM stands for. And this goes hand in hand with the CPU, where it allows you to do a bunch of different things while also having access to loaded files already, so it doesn't have you don't have to wait a long time for stuff to load in, especially when it comes to gaming. And the GPU, which is usually reserved for the graphics card, they don't have an equivalent essentially when it comes to normal PCs, but the closest thing that researchers have found is that it is the closest thing to the AMD RX 7600 series. Now, this one, a lot of people were complaining when it comes to cards like that, for example, with the new age cards, because it only has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, this is different than RAM because this one, it comes to loading in textures and ensuring the highest possible resolution when you're playing or watching something on your screen. And 8 gigabytes, I think, is more than enough for most games, especially since Valve has said that they are targeting a 4K 60 frames per second output on all of their games on the Steam machine, which is a pretty hefty thing to do when it comes to all games. I mean, there are very graphic intensive games such as Cyberpunk 2077, Red Dead Redemption 2, the new Grand Theft Auto 6 that is supposed to eventually come out, but until I see it, I won't believe it. But it's more than enough, I think, to run most games at a smooth gameplay level. But like I said before, with Valve wanting 4K 60 frames per second on every game, that just ensures that you're playing them at the highest quality possible and very, very smooth. FPS stands for frames per second, and the higher you have, the smoother your experience will be visually. But if you had to rank the kind of processing power that the Steam machine, based on these specs, is capable of, most people would say it is right between the Xbox Series S and a base PlayStation 5. And that's still pretty powerful considering you're getting a very compact PC essentially to have in your living room. And one thing that was particularly exciting that comes with the Steam machine is a brand new controller. And I don't have a picture of it, but it is pretty much the Steam Deck that you see right there. It is essentially if you took out the middle screen and just squished it together and made it a controller. And it looks a little odd for people who are used to either Xbox or PlayStation controllers, but those little track pads that are below the thumbsticks, that acts as a cursor for desktop mode if you're playing mouse-based games. So you can kind of move your thumbs around the trackpads to act as your mouse on either your games or desktop mode if you need that ease of access. And to be honest, if you've played with controller and you've played on PC, it is much easier to kind of navigate around either a menu or your operating system with a mouse compared to a controller, especially with typing. And although this doesn't have a keyboard, it just makes it easier to kind of put your cursor right in the typing bar to instead of having to scroll over with a button or a thumbstick. But the thumbstick specifically, it includes a Hall effect, which helps prevent joystick drift, which was a huge problem when it comes to Nintendo Switch and older Xbox controllers. And this is something that has plagued the gaming community for a really long time, where your joysticks, if you're playing a game, it'll move a certain direction on its own without you even moving it. So the fact that it has a Hall effect, which helps to prevent that at the highest level, is a great sign moving forward. But the controller itself also comes with a motion control where it also has gyro aiming. So instead of using the right thumbstick to aim if you're playing a first-person shooter or you're just trying to move the camera around, you can instead move the controller around. So wherever you move your controller, that's where you'll end up aiming on the screen with your crosshair. But there also is 4 grip buttons on the back of the controller that you can remap to whatever you want. These are more and more common today with modern controllers when it comes to customizability, especially in competitive games, where if you need to really quickly do something or use an item or a roll or do any sort of game mechanic super, super quickly without having to move your thumbs across the controller, these grip buttons are for that. So while you're already holding it, you can just kind of press them while you're playing it instead of distracting yourself trying to figure out, oh, which button do I need to hit? So it's very, very helpful, and that gives it that quality of life improvement. And one thing, if the new Steam controller isn't your cup of tea, it does have compatibility with both Xbox and PlayStation controllers, as well as Switch controllers and other third-party manufacturers. So it is a pretty much a universal controller connectivity, which is a huge, huge plus. And going back again to the cost, we really don't know what it could be. There have been plenty of estimates when it comes to comparing it to if it's going to be priced at a console level or a PC level. And according to one of Valve's hardware engineers, they're looking more towards PCs. They said they are trying to have a competitive price to similarly built PCs when it comes to the components that are in it. And I don't think this is going to happen, but if it does somehow end up being priced around $400 to $500, I think this is a console killer for sure, because all of the benefits that I previously named when it comes to free online play, largest game library in the world, and constant sales on games where as they're getting more and more expensive today. There's so many sales that are available on Steam games. And you can also have a Steam family where you can share those games. So only one of you needs a copy. And then if you're playing a single player game, you can all pitch in and buy it. That's what my friends and I do. I don't know about you. If you have a Steam account and you're a PC gamer and you're in a Steam family, you know all of the benefits that are available now with Steam and sharing games. There have been so many games in our library that we've been able to share with one another, especially single player games where I'm going to try to get through as many as I can before the Game Awards that are all nominated, which I will talk about right after this. But if it ends up being in that price range, I think it's a no-brainer. Absolutely a no-brainer. Even if you have a gaming PC already, I think it's a game changer when it comes to if you want to play a game on the TV in the living room instead of just being in your room in your office. I think it would be a huge benefit to have something like this at the right price point. Now, if it's anything higher, you're kind of getting to the weighing your options range, because it's supposed to be this living room option, this entertainment center option. Anything higher than this, it would be seen essentially as a very niche PC to the average video game player. And IGN, who is this large, very large entertainment website when it comes to movies, games, shows, everything, they went ahead on PC Part Picker, which is where you can buy and price out all of the different components of your computer if you are planning on building one. And based on the specs that are in the Steam machine, again, the GPU is not a direct equivalent, but the most similar to it using that one, the parts and everything put together, it costs around $900 altogether. So I'm assuming that the price will end up being around $700 to $800. I think if it's $700, that's a much easier sell, considering that the PS5 digital is $500 now, and the Xbox Series X digital is $600. And again, going back to the online memberships, the controllers, the games that don't go on sale nearly as much as Steam, I think added all together in the long run, the Steam machine would be a better value. But that remains to be seen what the price will be. Again, we don't know for sure. It's supposed to release in Q1 of 2026. So before the end of March, we'll see what happens. Hopefully we hear some more news soon, but I don't expect it to. With the holidays coming up, there's going to be a lot. They're so busy right now. And especially since in gaming, yesterday, the Game Awards recently revealed its nominees as of yesterday. And the Game Awards are an annual award show. It's pretty much like the Oscars for games now. It's become a bigger and bigger event each year, as it started in 2014, I believe, and it has grown every single year. It has become this huge thing. It will be held on December 11th at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles, California. And the voting for these games is open until December 10th, the night before the awards. And there were plenty of news to go around when it comes to this, especially during the Game Awards. Every year during the Game Awards, they also tease some upcoming releases and announcements for new games. So I'm very excited to see what new games are on the horizon. But as far as the games that are nominated, Claire Obscure Expedition 33, which I've talked about before on this show, I'm sure some of you at home have played it. It has been the talk of the town when it comes to games this year. It is it received 12 nominations yesterday, which is the most nominated game of all time since the game awards started, and it deserves absolutely every one of them, I believe. It is one of my favorite games of all time. The narrative, the visuals, the gameplay. I know some people are turned off by turn based combat when it comes to RPGs or role playing games, but I promise you, it is so engaging in the way that you can counterattack, you can block, you can dodge. It is so fun, and I highly recommend you to give it a try. If you don't like just the prologue of the game, I don't know what to tell you, because that first mission or chapter of the game, that absolutely hooked me the rest of the way. The story and the writing is just so beautiful and amazing. I can't recommend it enough. But like I said, it earned 12 nominations, and as far as game of the year, out of everything goes, it was of course nominated for that, along with Donkey Kong Bonanza, Death Stranding 2, Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Now, that is a pretty strong lineup, but I do think that Expedition 33 will come away with the win for Game of the Year. I think most people are predicting that because, again, it blew everybody away, and it deserves all the praise that it has been getting. As far as best voice acting performance, it was actually nominated for 3 of the 5 spots. And those nominees were Jennifer English, who plays Mael, Ben Starr, who plays Verso, and Charlie Cox, who plays Gustav. And a lot of people were saying that Andy Serkis, who plays the villain Renoir in this game, he should have been nominated. I think I would have personally put him over Charlie Cox, but that's just a preference thing. I think Andy Serkis is absolutely phenomenal. For those of you who don't know, he was Alfred in the Batman. He was in Planet of the Apes. He was in Black Panther. His voice is just so commanding in this game, and he makes such a menacing and great villain in this game. So it's a shame that he didn't get nominated, but they only had 5 spots, and 3 of them went to one game. So I understand you had to kind of cut things somewhere. I think they'll also get best score in music, because their soundtrack is genuinely one of the best I've ever heard. Just on the menu music, I was almost like tearing up because it is so beautiful. It is, oh my gosh, I can't say enough about it. But this game, I keep praising it because it was made with a core team of just 30 members. And that is unprecedented in today's age, with these hundreds of employees making these AAA games with these bloated budgets, and the fact that they were able to create essentially this masterpiece with just 30 people, it's nothing short of absolutely remarkable and impressive. So I think especially the soundtrack and the score, I think that is a home run win for them. That's an absolute lock for them, because it is, if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend it. It is so beautiful. But when it comes to best action game, I think that Hades 2 will take that home. I am playing through it right now. It is so much fun. I absolutely loved the first Hades game, and I think this absolutely deserves best action game, because they took everything that made Hades 1 good and stepped it up a ton, because it is such a blast to play through. If you aren't familiar with it, it is a roguelike where every run you do through the game, it kind of resets and you have to go through it again if you end up dying, but you can work to get stronger between each run so that the next run won't be as hard, and you're kind of familiarize yourself with the worlds. So you know what you're doing, you're not getting lost out there, and you kind of work to get better, and the reward is getting better at the game. And it is deeply based in Greek mythology, which is super interesting. And you see all of the Greek gods and titans throughout the game that help you along your way. It is such a blast to play through. So I think hopefully that will take home best action game. When it comes to best family game, I think this one either goes to Donkey Kong Bonanza or Split Fiction. Now, Donkey Kong Bonanza is super fun in its own right. Nintendo never ever misses when it comes to their huge platforming games. And I, as a huge platforming fan myself, when it comes to Super Mario, especially Super Mario Galaxy, which we also just got a new trailer for the Super Mario Galaxy movie, which looked really, really good. But with Donkey Kong Bonanza, it has been a blast to play through as well. It is essentially a continuation of Super Mario Odyssey in a way, because it is the same development team that made Super Mario Odyssey. So it definitely feels and looks similar. But, you know, as a huge fan of Odyssey, I was thoroughly enjoyed to see that reflected in Donkey Kong Bonanza. But Split Fiction, on the other hand, that could be a sleeper pick for best family game, because Hazelight, which is a studio that only has 3 games under its belt, you have A Way Out, It Takes Two, and now Split Fiction. But It Takes Two, back in 2023, they ended up taking home a bunch of game awards, and that included Best Family Game, Best Multiplayer Game, and Game of the Year. So they are a dark horse for me to win Best Family Game. I hope they at least come away with something, but you never know. As far as the best community support, that will probably end up going to Baldur's Gate 3, which ended up winning 6 game awards back in 2023, including Game of the Year that year. Another phenomenal game based on Dungeons and Dragons. Such a joy to play. I absolutely love that, even though I didn't think I would coming into it. So if you're on the fence about it, I would absolutely give it a chance. The story alone and the characters, they hooked me from the beginning. But most anticipated game is, of course, Grand Theft Auto 6, which also won last year before it got delayed again to November of 2026. And as I said before, until I see it actually released, I don't believe it's ever coming out, because the constant delays and development issues at Rockstar Games, especially with more stuff coming out with Red Dead Redemption 2 and just how incredibly detailed that game was. I can't imagine the development process of Grand Theft Auto 6 is any easier or better for its employees, because I feel like they're just getting worked like dogs over there. And the more you do that, I think the more problems will come up, which is why it keeps getting delayed. And the thing about the Grand Theft Auto games is that people aren't in it for the hyper realism when it comes to the games. They just want a fun game that they can enjoy with their friends, ideally. And we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But that's all I have today for today's Tech Tuesday. Be sure to join us tomorrow for another edition of Wellness Wednesday on KTAL News Now, which streams every day, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. But for now, I'm Anthony Mocklin. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.